15 to 20 minutes.
All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by the one and only Robert Cessna. Cease, you dealing with any allergies this week? A lot of people are around town.
No, I just pinched a nerve in my back out at the consolidated Brenham baseball game, which was a great game to be at. But luckily, this is the second day removed. This is Thursday, so I'm feeling a lot better today. I've done that before. I have back issues. Everybody has something. You're right. My wife has allergies. Daughter and son have allergies. I've got back issues once in a while.
Well, everybody's got something going on here, and everybody's got an opinion around town about who A&M should hire as its next head men's basketball coach. Of course, Buzz Williams left for the Maryland job on Tuesday. Let's start with that. I don't think anybody was surprised by it. I certainly wasn't. You know, we had talked for weeks about what was Buzz going to do because, you know, it was kind of culminating his tenure with this really senior heavy group. He was going to have to rebuild no matter what, whether it was here or probably somewhere else. And in a lot of ways, I think A&M fans they'd kind of gotten a little apathetic to his style of play and what he was bringing to the table as the basketball coach.
I felt for him to stay, they had to make the Sweet 16, and then
or better,
because then everybody be excited and go, okay, he's got to rebuild, but okay, he just took. They could say, quote, he just took us to the Elite Eight. I mean, he can do this again, so we'll be okay. But instead, had the Sweet 16, didn't even make the Sweet 16, lost to the 4 seed. So the writing was on the wall, and you go back. I talked to a lot of my peers as well as you did. Before the season, a lot of us thought, hey, if this guy retired at the end of the year, you wouldn't be surprised at anything. Buzz was a little bit of a loose cannon. And like everyone said, 4, 5, 6 years, that's about where he stays. And so, I don't think anybody's begrudging him. He wanted to be here when he was here. He didn't win enough. That's the bottom line. Whether you like somebody or hate somebody, what's your record? He didn't do enough. And so now A&M needs to really put him in the rearview mirror as quick as possible, which you alluded to now. Where do they go? And everybody was pumped up for 12, 24 hours that maybe Chris Beard, it's like, oh, man, Santa Claus is going to come. Well, no, Santa Claus is not coming, and we don't even know if we're going to have any gifts for you underneath the tree right now. So within 24 hours, and then like you asked at the start, where does A&M go?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday all the chatter was, can A&M close the deal on Chris Beard? And that was what everybody was talking about. That's who the people we were calling were saying A&M's looking at, but it didn't happen. And Ole Miss comes back with a really big offer. It sounds like I think I saw one report that his salary's up to $7.5 million now, and Ole Miss has got a pretty good NIL commitment to back that.
NIL, yeah.
And so on one hand, you're A&M and you're thinking, geez, went big. You swing big, you miss big sometimes, right? That's kind of what home run hitters do. But, if you're also A&M, you're thinking, hey, basketball's got some interest. Why not swing big and try and get a guy that can keep it going and build off? Because what Buzz built wasn't bad. It just wasn't good enough for what A&M expected him to be able to do. A&M basketball is not in a bad spot right now. And let's be honest, men's basketball at A&M, probably number 3 on the pecking order of popularity and support between the big 3 sports behind football and baseball. But the other side of the coin is men's basketball is one of 2 sports that makes money. And the SEC has invested in basketball so much over the last decade, you'd be dumb if you didn't just try and put your best foot forward to compete in men's basketball in this current climate.
Here's the deal, as you touched on it, A&M, this is not a good job. It's been a good job when maybe Billy Gillespie here, when he was left, and they were able to bring Turgeon.
And it was only good because he was so scrappy and made it glamorous.
So what happens is a lot of times in these coaching searches, a lot of coaches will improve their position. They're all about what they want to do. And so while, Beard would have been a home run hire. If they had McCaslin in Tech, that would be a home run hire. But you look at what is out there in the coaching circles, so to speak. You look what happened. What Beard did is Beard knows the law of the land. He didn't want to come to A&M really. He wanted to go from Ole Miss to a Florida, an Auburn, somewhere like
maybe
that.
Maybe a Kansas if Self ever retires.
So what he's going to do is he's saying like, hey, I'm not going to go down the tube at A&M. I'll use A&M to better my position at Ole Miss. I'm winning at Ole Miss. If I get more money, I'll win more. And then 3-4 years from now, who knows? Because some guy pointed that out to me, which was a good theory. He goes, this is what coaches do. Cessna and I go, hey, last night I go, that's a great idea. He said, Beard just played us. He goes, You look at what Beard did is he got what he wanted. Now, like you said, Kansas calls in 3 or 4 years. Kansas is not going to come calling probably somebody at A&M. Even though one time you could say Kentucky came. And once again, is what I started is who does A&M hire? This is what comes up next. And who can get behind him? Because I was talking, actually somebody goes, hey, hire Joseph Jones. The problem is, I feel now, whoever A&M hires, a certain segment will not be happy.
Well, and that's kind of the predicament A&M's in because they were playing from behind because of how long it took Buzz to leave. I mean,
Yeah.
Let's think about it. Because,
True.
Okay, you're thinking, can A&M go and hire the next Nate Oates, who came from Buffalo, or Todd Golden, who came from a mid-major? Can A&M go hire a guy like that? The problem is a lot of the best guys that fit that criteria, they've already been picked, right?
Yep.
Will Wade went to NC State. Richard Pitino went to Xavier once Texas hired Sean Miller from there. The North Texas coach has a job, right? So you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, maybe the High Point coach, High Point was one of the trendy picks to be an upset, but I mean, is there a reason that guy's not off the board for one of these jobs yet, right? But on the flip side too, it's thinking, okay, is there any other coaches similar to Beard or Buzz that are kind of a proven coach with tournament experience at a high major college, right? And you start looking at guys, McCaslin would be a home run hire, but let's be honest, Tech's probably a better job than A&M is in this current state.
It is.
They've got a much bigger commitment to basketball. The foundation is there at Tech, and he's got a huge buyout. You look at a guy like Brad Underwood at Illinois, right? A guy who won pretty good at SFA, left on kind of shaky terms. They got some wins vacated from the NCAA tournament, but ESPN's reporting that his buyout's like $15 million. I don't know if A&M would pay that much to bring a football coach in, much less a men's basketball coach.
Unless it's Jimbo.
Unless it's Jimbo, and I don't think anybody wants a repeat of that. There's a reason that A&M is in this predicament that they're in, and his name has 5 letters, and it's JIMBO. So I don't think that's a route A&M wants to go down again. So who are the realistic candidates? It's really hard to say, quite frankly. And to be honest, I'm really curious where Trev Alberts is going to go with this and who's going to be hired. And I tend to agree with you that no matter who A&M hires at this point, there are some people that are going to be amped up, and there are going to be a lot of people that are pretty frustrated and not satisfied with whatever A&M does.
Well, and I feel for a lot of people, and I feel for Alberts because
I feel big for Trev
he's
right
going
now.
to have a home run hire. You look at, once again, you always got to look a little bit to your rival. Baseball comes open, Texas steals Schlossnagel, A&M hires early, he's struggling. Basketball, their guy goes to the NCAA tournament, A&M's guy goes to the NCAA tournament. They hire Sean Miller.
Sean Miller,
I'll get the name right. And then A&M hires who? Because Beard, I would argue Beard, maybe you could say, is better than Miller. But Mr. X, I don't think is going to be better on paper than Miller.
That's what I led in my column this week, is that this has just been a frustrating year for the big three sports on the men's side at A&M, right? Football starts 7-1. You got SEC title, college football playoff aspirations in year one under Mike Elko. A&M crumbles. We're going to talk about the defense here in a minute. Men's basketball, you got the most veteran team ever. You got Wade Taylor leading the way, and then you start 20-5. You're projected to be a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then you finish 3-6 to go down the stretch of the season, and then baseball's number 1, and we're going to talk about them in a minute too. We're halfway through the season, and it's going to take a miracle for A&M to even make the postseason, which I think is an inconceivable notion that many had 2 months ago.
Yeah, I looked last night, and it was late, one of those, brainstorms. I go, like, where's A&M baseball right now on RPI?
They're like 100.
It's like 101. And I go, like, you have got to be kidding me. And once again, as the record is proven, I go, they'd really have to get hot just to get in the 40s. I mean, the 50s. And I'm saying, like, and you can do it in this league. But getting back to your premise, what you started with, it's been very frustrating because you're right. Football's king. And there for a while, man, everybody was saying, like, hey, where's the best ball games? What about if they would host, and then the reality is they lose to USC in the Vegas Bowl.
Well, and let's be honest, too. All of that has been compounded by what Texas has been able to do in their first year in the SEC. They go to the SEC championship game. No, they didn't win, but they go to the college football playoff, right? They're right there in the thick of things in the semifinal, right? A&M gets all amped up, and they kind of lay an egg in that Texas game. I mean, if they don't get that miracle fumble recovery, scoop and score going all the way, Texas shuts A&M out on their home field. Yeah. I mean, it was rough. And then to think about what Schloss has been able to do on the baseball diamond, Texas is in the top 5.
Let's not forget women's basketball. An Aggie is in the Final Four with Texas. Vic Schaefer has, and a lot of Aggies, that doesn't set well with them.
No, it doesn't. So
getting back to your premise.
Getting back to the premise. So, well, let's talk about A&M baseball because they're playing UT, the team A&M fans will call UT, Tennessee. Where these two programs have gone since they met in the College World Series finals is just a little staggering. A lot of people, I think, when they saw the schedule come out, they circled this weekend on the calendar. Tennessee's held up their end of the bargain. They're number 1 in the country. They're probably a front runner to win the whole thing back-to-back again. A&M, on the other hand, not as much. They really struggled last weekend in the last 2 games against Kentucky. They struggled in a lot of ways the first game against Kentucky. And,
should have lost that one.
They probably should have, but the way that they won and they fought back and they overcame the 6-run deficit. And the way that they won, I kind of was thinking, okay, if they can just get one, can they get something going? And they weren't able to capitalize off of it. The hit batters in the second game, I think, really hurt A&M in a lot of ways. Just too many free passes that, to Kentucky's credit, they took advantage of. And then in the third game, look, I get it. The Kentucky coach maybe did some antics. You can call it Bush League, whatever you want to call it. He played to the advantage of what the situation was, and it worked.
Won the game.
And he won the game, and that's what mattered to him. And that was a huge win for either team, and Kentucky got it.
And going into that game, everybody knows what the rules are. It's like, once again, as you can say, like, well, hey, why the time limit, all this stuff? But going in, you better be ahead in the 4th or 5th inning because you could lose. Yeah,
so, obviously it doesn't get a lot better, or easier, I should say. April is going to be just a gauntlet of a month. A&M's got Tennessee, and then they come home and they play South Carolina, who's kind of been struggling. But then they go on the road to Arkansas.
Who's really good.
And then they go on the road to Texas, who has been really good, and it will probably be an emotional series. And then they got to play LSU, who is also in the top 10. So it's kind of April we knew was going to be a murderer's row, especially when you think about where A&M's got to go on the road. But for a team that right now is at 500 and just begging to get something going in the right direction and a momentum. And look, baseball is a momentum sport. If you get hot, you get hot. But something you mentioned before we started recording was, hey, A&M hasn't shown that they can turn it on. We're halfway through the season. At some point, you are who you are, and have we reached the point of no return for this A&M baseball team?
Well, every week, and it's a little closer because you touched on it. That when at that time I'm at softball or whatever, just paying attention. I go, A&M's down 6-1, 7-1. You think, oh, they're going to lose. They come back and win, and you think like, oh, the bubbles, Olsen magic, what have you. They'll be able to build on that. Not even close. Saturday's game, like you mentioned, too many mistakes, and that's been. You just can't do that. You've got to put back to back. It's like we see A&M hire coaches. They have one good year, then they get a contract extension, then they go in the tubes, so to speak. And until A&M does that 2 games in a row or 2 out of 3 where they play a quality opponent, that's the good thing in the SEC. If they'd happen to go to Tennessee and win 2 out of 3, they would definitely feel better about the weekend. They become an home play. South Carolina, somebody else that you could beat 2 out of 3. And by the way, South Carolina, you close. They played a lot of people close, and they have a coach that won a championship, so he knows what he's doing. But they've had some tough luck as well. My point being is A&M can't even take them lightly. That's the soft punch in this deal in this next forum. But baseball is you got to take them one at a time. If they can win out 2 out of 3, then come on. But so far, what have we seen? They're losing 2 out of 3, or they're losing all 3, and they've never looked like the top-ranked team in the nation this whole year.
Well, and the injury bug just continues to bite A&M. Caden Sorrell, he came back this last weekend from the hamstring injury, hit the home run in his first at-bat. The crowd went wild. But then in the Tuesday game, he gets a little bit of a cramp. Early says he's fine, and A&M better hope he is because he's a big boost to that lineup. And so don't expect him to play in the field this weekend. He'll probably hit at DH, but on the other end too, at first base, Gavin Cash, he's probably going to be out for most of the weekend. He also is dealing with a hamstring injury that he suffered at the end of the Kentucky game. He made an incredible extension to make a double play that really gave A&M any chance of even coming back at the end of the game. But he's banged up. Expect Blake Bender up to get the start at first base this weekend, at least on the Friday game. And then, Josh Stewart, he's been out since the opening weekend, and Early said today that he's not going to pitch this season, the rest of the season. And so,
why waste somebody? Right?
Yeah. You get a guy. Hopefully, he can get a red shirt. He'd probably qualify for. He threw 6 pitches. If you can't qualify, if the NCAA doesn't give you a red shirt for throwing 6 pitches and you get a knee injury that knocks you out the rest of the season, then that's pretty bad. But a lot of things have not gone A&M's way in baseball. They've had to overcome a lot, and unfortunately, it just hasn't been enough for them. The results just haven't shown, and that's the hardest pill to swallow, I think, too, is there was so much excitement and anticipation coming into the season, and it just has floundered as of now.
And this community loves baseball.
They do.
And they love Olsen Field. And then you think they just haven't had any moments. After 2 years of a lot of moments.
There were 7,500 people at the Saturday game.
Right. And
for a team that was under or at 500.
And everybody wants to go to Olsen Field for the Magic, and they want to see the team win. That hasn't changed, and that's why it could at any time turn around. But that's why it's so hard to win on the road on the SEC. You go to Vanderbilt. When I saw Arkansas swept Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt, Arkansas is the real deal. But that's this league. If you go to Mississippi State and win, if you go to Auburn and win, you have earned it. You go to Georgia's turned their program. Alabama's turned their program around. It's like it is in men's basketball. Baseball is so tough, and A&M had one of the best home field advantages in the country. And this year in SEC, where they 1-5, they got swept by Alabama, right? And
they're
lost.
1-8.
But I'm
at home.
I'm just saying this. You got to win at home, and they're 1-5 at home.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I got you. I got you. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. We'll go talk A&M football real quick. Spring practice underway, of course, about halfway through the spring practice schedule. Talked with Jay Bateman and Colin Klein this week, and obviously, I think the topic everybody wants to know is, how's the defense improved this offseason? Because, look, Mike Elko didn't mince words after the Las Vegas Bowl. We've talked about that on this podcast before. But this was the first time we got to talk with Jay Bateman since that happened. And, I'll be honest, I was thoroughly impressed at just the honest answers that he gave. I mean, he was very open and transparent. They've had serious discussions about changing some schematics, which he politely refrained from divulging into because, trade secrets. And he said, look, Elko's more hands-on. He wants to know the why behind things and the reasoning behind decisions and why they're being made. And talked about the dynamics of Lyle Hemphill, who has been brought in to help start riding the ship in the right direction.
Well, what I see is Elko is a great defensive coordinator. Time will tell if he's a great head coach. And it's a little bit like you can look at that Jimbo experience as well. When I did some research, when Elko went to Duke, he let his coaches, let his defensive coaches call things because, most people say you interfere too much. Well, then I look, his defensive coordinator the first year, they had a great year, but end of the year the guy leaves for personal reasons. And you look, there weren't personal reasons when you look at his graphic. He kept coaching and he didn't have a good job. He was an analyst at Penn State, whatever. But bottom line is, he got a new coach in. Who did he get? He got Hemphill was in along with Tyler Santucci, who was here before. Guys that Elko can work with, guys that work under Elko. So what you're seeing, the good thing about Jay Bateman, you can see he takes orders. Hemphill takes orders. And then Elko's saying, I can't stay back. I can't say this. I can't watch this defense play anymore because it's just eating me inside because it's just too good. But you also have to have people that will work with you, take what you say. Jimbo could never get an offensive coordinator for him and them agree. It was Jimbo or nothing. He brought in Petrino. Petrino didn't do anything.
Yeah, he was sitting there with his hands tied behind his back.
So what you're seeing is Bateman saying, hey, we're doing it this way. We're doing it the way Elko says. I mean, you can see he's been around the block. You can see why him and Elko get along. Elko probably went in the first day after that, and he goes, did you hear what I said after the bowl? Double to you guys. You guys suck. We're going to do this and it. And Bateman goes, hey, you're right. That's the kind of guy you want. And you can see Bateman. I'm not saying he's bowing down. That's just a working relationship. And we've heard Elko say that. We get along great. And you can bet they holler at each other, and that's going to make it work. And that's why A&M's defense will be better. And they bring Hemphill in. He was over at that same deal at Duke for 2 years. The safeties then move up. You got to have a staff that works together. I don't think people realize this more. Football is so complex, so many assistants. You better have a staff that gets along because we seen with Jimbo, and then we even see with Sumlin. You go Kevin Sumlin, not a good deal. You have 2 or 3 assistants, and I'll go back even further to why Franchione failed. If you have 2 or 3 assistants that are weak, you're going to have trouble.
Well, that's a good point, and something else that Bateman mentioned that once you start kind of unpacking it, kind of makes a little bit of sense. A&M had to shuffle their cards around in the secondary, particularly last year when they got injuries, right? Think about Tyreek Chappelle. He was a guy that everybody was really high on. That he was their clear-cut starter at nickel. He gets hurt like the second week of the season, and then Jaden Hill struggles. They have to pull B.J. Mays from corner and put him at nickel, and he did a pretty good job at that nickel position, but kind of throws things out of whack. And then, Bryce Anderson's pretty open. Hey, he was dealing with a shoulder injury pretty much the entire season. It's kind of hard to tackle when you got a bad shoulder, and safeties make a lot of tackles. And also, safety is a very important position in Elko's defense. So it's not trying to say excuses, but A&M was dealing with scheme was struggling, guys were banged up. They were trying to have to make stuff work on the fly a little bit. They feel like guys are healthy. They like their depth, and this is the time of year to say all those good things. We'll see if it all pays out when it's October and November.
And the same thing goes for offense. Somebody asked Klein a question yesterday, like, you like to use a lot of tight ends. And you can see him laugh and smile because he didn't have his offense here last year because Wegman wasn't their quarterback, but yet he was their starting quarterback. They needed somebody with a run-pass option, who, a la Marcel Reed, and hope. And be quite honest, don't know if Marcel Reed is the guy. We'll wait and see. Can he pass? Because you got to throw the ball. It's one thing to be able to be a good runner, but my point being is, Elko's problem was. Last year, his main problem was he had too much success early. A&M was winning. They had a nice, favorable schedule. And everybody goes like, hey, 7-1, this team's going to win 10, 11 games. No. Started playing better teams. Offensively, defense, they lost. So now we're seeing year 2. And guess what? A&M plays a much tougher schedule. A&M could be vastly improved this year and still be 8-5 or 9. Let's just wait and see what happens. But they're taking the right steps. Will they have the right results? Hey, it's only April 2nd or 3rd. We can't say it's April Fool's, but it's close.
It's April 3rd.
There you go.
Cease, we got 4 minutes left. Quick on A&M softball. Big series this weekend if they can take care of business against
Georgia. They're Georgia. It's a Saturday to Sunday, Monday night game. It's the featured deal. I look for them to win at least 2. Actually, they probably should sweep. Then they come home to play LSU in Tennessee. If they take care of business, they have 2 big series left out of the 7, whatever out of the 5. That's at Tennessee to end the season, and next week against LSU.
And the A&M men's tennis team, they got a big week starting tonight at Mississippi State, and then they come home Saturday to host Texas, who is leading the SEC. It's kind of a litmus test week, I think, for the men's tennis team. They've had a really good start to conference play. Now, can they hang with the big dogs and prove that they belong and should maybe host a regional round in the NCAA tournament?
They're right, like where A&M football was at 7-1. They need to go to Mississippi State and take care of business, and they need to come home and play well against Texas. I'll be quite honest, I don't know if they can beat Texas, but you always can beat your rival if you play your best.
That is a very accurate statement. And also an accurate statement. We're out of time, so be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M sports. We'll be back next week on
Rambling with Us, whatever you call this thing. What do you go?
the Miami Nation podcast.
You got to come.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.